This is Minecraft. I've seen so many videos online showcasing Minecraft with ultra realistic graphics, but are these actually real mod packs that you can download and play? Today we're taking a look at Ardacraft, which is a mod pack and server that was started with the goal of recreating Middle Earth in Minecraft. We're going to be exploring Ardacraft, starting off in the Shire and making our way all the way to Minas Tirith. So sit back, relax, and let's enjoy the journey. So yeah, like I said in the intro, this is Ardacraft. And I think it would be really cool if we started off in the Shire and traveled all the way to Mordor, kind of following along with the Fellowship of the Ring. I think that'd be really cool. So Ardacraft is a recreation of Middle Earth done entirely in Minecraft. This is done using a big variety of mods, the main one being Conquest Reforged, and they even use Create. So you may notice the shaders. These are the Bliss shaders, which is built into the Ardacraft mod pack. So recently I did an interview with the Ardacraft founder, Jack. It was actually really fun, so I'll leave that linked in the description. But one of the things that he said to me that really stood out was the ability that you can literally walk from Hobbiton to basically anywhere, right? So there's not really a set path. Eventually I want to head over to Bree. This map is actually so huge. I heard in a recent interview that the Ardacraft map is actually 70 times the size of Skyrim, and every single detail you see in this world is actually handcrafted by a player, either through World Painter or actually in-game. So Ardacraft has a huge team of builders. Let's quickly step inside one of these buildings. Pretty much every building you look at, you can enter. So what's kind of funny is I was never really a big fan of The Lord of the Rings. I never really watched the movies or anything. And Ardacraft was actually my first experience with Middle Earth and this world and the lore. And it really inspired me to actually want to go and watch the movies. And so currently we are just walking through the Shire, and this is just one of literally hundreds of locations in Ardacraft. A little bit later we'll actually be making our way to Rivendel, Edoras, Moria, and even Minas Tirith a little bit later on. It's pretty cool, but you can see the amount of detail the builders are able to get into here with Conquest Reforged. So it's incredible to see what people are able to do with Minecraft. So Conquest Reforged actually is a lot of people mistake Conquest Reforged for Ardacraft or the other way around, but they are technically two separate kind of projects. Ardacraft uses Conquest Reforged, but it's not Conquest Reforged, if that makes sense. And from what I was hearing from Jack, the two teams actually work very closely together. So we're just kind of following along a path here in the Shire. Fornad, or Jack, was basically telling me that the whole point of Ardacraft is that you're really able to walk everywhere. So theoretically, even though we're just walking along a random path, this will lead somewhere. And my main goal of this video is really just to showcase some of the main locations. So we're actually going to go on a journey from the Shire all the way to Mordor, which I think would be really cool. If you've been enjoying the video so far, this is just a reminder to check if you're subscribed. It literally only takes 1 second. So thank you so much. And if you want to see videos just like this before everyone else does, feel free to join the Sexy Hair Club. Your crush will literally fall madly in love with you, and you'll get to see all my videos before everyone else does, as well as getting exclusive emojis that you can use in comments. And you can join that by clicking the join button on this video or by clicking the link in the description. Alright, let's get back into it. So kind of flying up here, you can see we have distant horizons installed, which lets us see way farther than the normal render distance would allow us. But you can see the scale of everything. It's kind of crazy to think about, but literally every single mountain, every single hill you see off in the distance, we could walk to every single one of them. And I think that's what makes Ardacraft so special. So kind of stopping in at this farm here, one of the features I really want to point out here in Ardacraft is the Pathfinder. By right-clicking the Pathfinder, we open up a menu here, and we can select a variety of different paths that we can follow along with. So we have Frodo's path, Aragorn's path, Bilbo, Merry. So let's just select Frodo's path for now, and we'll quickly have to restart over here at Bag End. But you can see with the Pathfinder, we get some text on the screen. So the 23rd of September 3018, after sunset, Frodo, Sam, and Pippin set out on their quest. So you can actually follow along with the characters from The Lord of the Rings using the Pathfinder tool. And I can imagine just having the audiobook playing while you're doing this. Wishing to avoid unfriendly eyes, they head west in order to skirt around Hobbiton. So yeah, with the Pathfinder, you kind of have this guided experience through Ardacraft, which I think is one of the coolest things. You could select Frodo's path, you can select Aragorn's path, which starts off in Bree, flying over hobbits in here. I think it's really important to emphasize the fact that this is just a single location. And if you visit Ardacraft's website, there's actually hundreds of locations that you can explore. And this map is so big that it would literally take hours upon hours to walk the entire map. So thankfully that we do have a warp command that we're able to use. And by using the warp command, you're able to teleport to various locations that they have listed on the website, which I think is really helpful if you want to explore some key locations quickly. So following the pathway along to Bree, this is one of the first locations that the Fellowship travels to, and it's actually where they meet Strider. So what's kind of interesting about Ardacraft is the fact that, like I was saying, you literally could walk from Hobbiton to Bree if you'd like to. So let me quickly pull up the journey map here, and you can kind of see the scale of Bree where I am on the map. But if we scroll all the way over to the left, you can actually see Hobbiton way over here. So all this unexplored location, you could theoretically walk. You could follow this path from Hobbiton to Bree, but you can kind of notice that there's a lot of elevation change here, and that's part of Conquest Reforged. So Conquest Reforged, the best way to describe it is, if you're familiar with snow from vanilla Minecraft, how you're able to place it layer by layer, that's very much how Conquest Reforged works, and obviously it adds a huge variety of different blocks. So not only are you able to do that with snow, but you're able to do it with other objects, you know, things like stone, things like wood, and by doing that, by adding that extra layer of depth to building, you can get these very detailed buildings here. So we're off at a little farmhouse here on our way to Bree, but I do want to emphasize the point that most of this map was detailed by a player. From how it was explained to me, the base of the map was done in World Painter, so things like the terrain, the general layout of the terrain. And from what I know, World Painter, you can go into as much detail as doing slabs. Let's take these fields, for example. A player had to actually come in and build all of this by hand or place it by hand. The map itself was painted in World Painter. A lot of it still has to be done by players. So there's not anything in this map that was randomly generated or left up to chance. And it's kind of crazy. A lot of these fields, you know, they look very beautiful. They look really pretty to look at. Jack was actually telling me that they actually have a huge document that they study up on that sort of details the entire farming process. So if we check the time here, you can see we have a date here based on the season that you can see some of the farmland is ready to harvest, some of it is being actively plowed, and that's all based on real data that they've collected. They're really trying to create a world that's obviously based on Middle-earth, but still follows like realism to a certain extent, which I think is absolutely incredible. I love this beautiful little farm area that we have here. You can see a windmill off in the distance. That's part of the Create mod. I wasn't really too familiar with Middle-earth, and I still have a lot to learn about it. But I never watched the Lord of the Rings movies growing up. I've always just been a big fan of video games, so this was really my first little introduction to Middle-earth. And you may notice some of the locations look a little bit different from the movies, and that's because Ardacraft is based on the books. So making our way to Bree, you can see just walking at a normal pace, it does take quite a little bit, even walking from that farmhouse over to Bree here. But the scale of everything is incredible. I do want to point out before we get into Bree, the attention to detail on absolutely every building. You can see some wood lintels and things kind of sticking out here, just to add depth to all the builds. That's also part of Conquest Reforged, the wood timbering and things. So entering Bree. Bree's actually one of the oldest settlements in Middle-earth, and it's inhabited by both people and hobbits. Kind of walking through the streets here. I love the subtle little pathway here, kind of gradually sloping up. One of the main spots I want to stop in is at the Prancing Pony, which is where Frodo and all the gang meet up with Strider. But before we do that, I kind of want to just get a quick little overview of Bree from the sky. It actually looks really beautiful. So what's kind of interesting is that one of the details I really want to point out is since Bree is so old, you'll see a lot of texturing on the builds. So you'll see a lot of different stonework that was done to actually showcase like, okay, Bree is this old settlement that's very much lived in, so it's not pristine, right? So you have this older stone on the bottom, moving up to a gradually newer, lighter stone here. But even Bree by itself, I feel like could be a map. But let's step inside the prancing pony here. Nice little place to kick your feet up and relax after a long journey. This is where Strider would be when he meets the characters. You can even see the beams up on the roof here. Just so many details went into this map. So one of the things I actually want to do is I actually want to showcase what Ardacraft looks like without shaders, if you're curious. So without shaders, this is going to sound like such a weird opinion, but I actually really love the way Minecraft looks without shaders. And if you guys would like me to do maybe another video with without shaders exploring the map, let me know. But I think for the sake of the video, I'll leave them on. But you can see without the shaders, things are a lot more flat and evenly lit because there's not real-time lighting in Minecraft. But I still think it looks beautiful. And you may have noticed a player walking around, also exploring Bree with us. So Ardacraft is a public server. So you can see we have a guest here. Ardacraft is a public server, meaning anybody can join it. So Ardacraft made a really nifty tutorial. It only takes about 2 minutes to watch through, and it'll show you how to install Ardacraft and join the server. So I'll leave a link for that in the description. But quickly looking at this building here, you can see the amount of texturing and detail that goes into even just singular buildings. So you can see much older stone here. I feel like this is one of the older buildings of Bree just because of how dark and weathered it looks. But let's quickly turn shaders back on. I feel like the shader, whenever you have the shaders off, it's much easier to see all the different individual blocks that are being used. But with the shaders on, the things start blending in more and more seamlessly, which I really love. You can even see on the roof here, parts where rainwater kind of collected, it's a lot more mossy. Whereas like the open parts of the roof are a lot cleaner. It's the really small details like that add to a bigger picture here. I think it's kind of funny. At first I wanted to say that this building was a church, but there's obviously some sort of trading hall going on in here. I really enjoy walking through the city of Bree. This is such a bad comparison because I don't really have a frame of reference for it, but Bree really reminds me of something you would see maybe in Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is a game I'm terrible at. But yeah, Bree really reminds me of something you'd see in Kingdom Come Deliverance, just the architecture. And even going from Hobbiton to Bree, the change in architecture is really noticeable. So it's not like there's anything that was really like copy and pasted between the builds. So every single location is unique from one another depending on what the actual lore behind the location is. So kind of on the outer edges of Bree now, making our way through a little graveyard. But I wanted to get a closer look at this windmill that we saw earlier as we were walking up. So you can see obviously the windmill is moving, and that's part of the create mod. A lot of the builds, not only do they look very aesthetically pleasing and beautiful, but they do actually serve a purpose, which I think is a really cool detail. So the next location I want to check out is Rivendel, which is where everybody goes to after Frodo is injured. They get taken to Rivendel here. And I remember the first time joining Ardacraft, I was blown away by Rivendel. I feel like this location is absolutely stunning, especially with the landscaping around it. And one of the interesting things that you can actually do is you can actually change the time here. So let's say we wanted to switch it to midnight, we could do that. So the actual in-game time is kind of static, and you can change the in-game time to whatever it is that you'd like to. But for now, we'll just keep it at noon. That way it's easier to see. But you can see the path to Rivendel. Nice little mountain pass here. I think if I was to visit any location from Middle-earth, it would definitely be Rivendel. I just feel like this location has the coziest little vibe to it. And you can just see how massive this map actually is. So I briefly mentioned it before, but a lot of the smaller little details here, even alongside the river, these are all placed by hand by a player or by a team of builders. And you can just see there's not really any details that are sort of left out here. This little stream that follows near Rivendel is actually really detailed, and it's one of my favorite little things. We could follow this all the way out to wherever it leads to. It's not like Rivendel is just by itself. You could theoretically walk from Bree to Rivendel if you had enough time and you wanted to. But I think just following along the river and seeing Rivendel off in the distance is actually such a cool view. And you can actually see another player walking around here, just hanging out, also checking out Rivendel. But I'm really curious to hear what your guys' favorite locations from Middle-earth are. Did you guys grow up reading the books or watching the movies? Ardacraft was my first little dip into the world of Middle-earth. I think before we head inside, I want to take a look around the gardens here and the landscapes. But just doing a quick little fly around Rivendel here, you can see the immense amount of detail that the team of builders puts into this. And from what I know, every single location has a different set of builders. So it's not all the same people building everything, but a lot of builders work on multiple projects. But just kind of zooming in on the detail, you can see how much depth is put into different faces of the building. And it looks fantastic. I love Rivendel. I'm definitely a really big fan of elven architecture. But before we head inside, I really want to take a look around the grounds surrounding Rivendel. I'm a really big fan of landscaping, especially in my own Minecraft worlds. But Ardacraft definitely takes it to a whole new level with the amount of detail they're able to get into. And as you can see, all the trees that we're looking at, all of these were custom made. And in one of my previous videos where I was interviewing Jack, he actually took me to the tree grid, which is where all the builders actually build out the individual trees and they're able to kind of paint them into the world. So they build them out on this little tree grid and then they import it over into the main world here, which is actually really, really cool to see. And actually seeing the tree grid in game was kind of surreal. It looks almost alien. Looks like we have like a little vineyard out here on the side. I really love the surrounding area of Rivendel. I think the craziest part to me is that literally you could walk from Bree to Rivendel following along with the characters as if you're in the movie with them or in the story with them. But let's head inside Rivendel here. Kind of stepping through the doors. You can actually see the doors are off access, which is kind of cool, meaning they're not like aligned to the grid or anything. So that's actually a really cool little detail here. But yeah, Rivendel is where Frodo gets taken after he's injured, and he rests here for a little bit, and they meet up with Gandalf here. It's so weird. It's weird to like look at this and just kind of remember that this is actually all in Minecraft. It almost feels like a totally different game as you're playing through this. Just the amount of detail that can get put into some buildings. We have like a little kitchen here, which I really like. Let's take a look out here from the balcony. Beautiful view of the river and the little ravine that we're in here. I even like the little detail of the waterfall there. You can kind of see the sun shining through because this is past my render distance. A little bit later, we'll actually be heading to Moria, which was another location that was actually suggested to me a couple times in the comments, which I really appreciate. I actually really appreciate all you guys hanging out with me. But you can see just the immense amount of detailing that goes into even just simple little hallways and throughways down here. I think this is definitely one of my favorite parts, just because it's close to the water and it's kind of built into the stone underneath it. I really love the little inclusions of smoke using the transparent blocks here. It's such a cool little detail. And I think it's one of those things that, sure, they could add like actual smoke, but I feel like it's a lot cooler to actually see them place the blocks. So actually taking a look outside here, you can actually see all the seating where they formed the fellowship, where they decided who was going to take the ring to destroy it. Yeah, Rivendel is definitely one of those iconic locations that I would love to just live at. And obviously it plays such a huge role in this story. So a little bit later on, I actually want to take a look at Moria, which is actually a lot bigger than most people think it is. You can see here we have a little bit of a well. And it's kind of funny, so Conquest Reforged has a lot of little animated sprites that you can add to your world, so things like these birds and things. Sometimes maybe you'll see flies, or you'll see birds in the sky, or different animals. It's actually really cool. I never actually knew that Conquest Reforged and Ardacraft were so intertwined with each other, meaning their teams work very closely with each other. And if you guys are interested in seeing maybe a playthrough with Conquest Reforged, let me know in a comment. I really do love playing on Conquest Reforged. It doesn't really change up the gameplay of Minecraft, but it definitely lets you build like really amazing things, as you can see here. For me, I feel like Ardacraft is definitely the pinnacle of Minecraft building, and it's really awesome. It's really cool that we're able to just kind of join and see what the team has been up to and has been building. But flying up over Rivendel here, you can see how far out the mountains go. So here we are in Moria, and you can just see the scale of this location. So I had to switch my shaders to rethinking voxels, which is also included in Ardacraft, and this is designed specifically for use in the underground locations here. But this looks just absolutely stunning. And not only does it look impressive and aesthetically pleasing, but when I was interviewing Jack, he actually showed me behind the scenes of how they are planning to do Moria. And it's this map in of itself is actually very, very big. Like it's almost unfathomably large to kind of put into words. But you can actually see here some signs that the building team has left for each other. So Ardacraft is an ongoing project. It's not fully complete, and it's all run by volunteers. And one of the benefits of it all being volunteers is that there's not really a deadline for it. So people can join. If I press tab, you can see we have builders and guests all online here. People kind of pick their sections that they want to do, and they can join and build. And they have a whole application process for if you're wanting to join Ardacraft and actually be a part of it and build on it. And then there's also plots that you can join and sort of just free build that isn't actually part of the main map, but it'll let you test out all the different tools and all the tool sets from Conquest Reforged, because it is a pretty comprehensive little building mod. But Rethinking Voxels is actually a really, really cool shader pack. I think it's real-time lighting. I think I'll quickly turn on night vision just so it's a little bit easier to see. We can see a little bit more detail here. But here's the bridge where Gandalf fights the Balrog and eventually falls down. But with night vision on, you can see just the immense detail here. And if we just kind of fly up here, you can see how tall this actually goes. And it drops down for, it looks like probably thousands of blocks. The building team in Ardacraft actually went as far as studying the actual geology and geography of Middle-earth to determine, okay, what type of stone would Moria be built into? And it's actually really, really cool. Honestly, just looking at this staircase here without the HUD, this genuinely does not look like Minecraft at all to me. But you could easily wander through Moria and get lost. Moria is actually so big that it takes up multiple maps. And quickly switching back to the Bliss shaders. Now we're back on the main Ardacraft map. Still very much a work in progress. So the next location I wanted to check out is Lothlorien. And you can actually see Caris Galadon way off in the distance there. I think for sure this is one of my favorite locations to walk through. I really love Lothlorien. Another Elvish location. I'm definitely a big fan of just Elvish architecture and the general kind of vibe. But like I was saying in the beginning of the video, you can this map is literally 70 times the size of Skyrim, and it's much bigger than most AAA game maps. And it was all built by a group of volunteers, Even individual regions like Lothlorien, walking to Caris Galadon it can take quite a while just doing that. So you can imagine the scale of this map. And I think what's amazing is that you literally could walk from Hobbiton that we started at to Bree, and then to Rivendel. Then you could find Moria, and then eventually make your way to Lothlorien. So I think, to me, that's the coolest part of Ardacraft, is how interconnected everything is. So Ardacraft has quite a few different mods in it. One of the ones I noticed as we're just kind of walking through the woods is actually the ambience. Let's follow along this little pulley here that would bring a boat across. But you can hear the different birds and things chirping in the woods. It just brings the whole world to life. But getting a overhead shot here, you can see the mountains off in the distance, Distant Horizons is definitely such a cool mod, and it really puts into perspective how big this project actually is. So we're making our way to the outskirts of Caris Galadon here, and we got like a nice little village out here in the woods. So actually, let's quickly change to midnight time here. You can see the woods really get a whole new look here. I do still have night vision on just so it's easier to see, but you get the general sense of how the lighting changes at nighttime here. But all the buildings have a very distinct architecture to them. We can see some similar block usage between Lothlorien and Rivendel here. We even have custom artwork in here as well, but a totally drastic, completely different architecture than Moria and Bree that we were at a little bit earlier. So jumping ahead to the entrance here. In the movie, this is where they meet up with the King Celeborn and the Queen Galadriel. And I always thought this was such a beautiful set piece from the movie. And it's really cool to see it recreated here in Ardacraft. Again though, Ardacraft is based on the Lord of the Rings books. And this location to me specifically looks really cool, especially at nighttime. Oh gosh, this is such a small random little detail, but I love this little like plank bridge across the stream here. Maybe like some kids threw that down as they were like playing. I don't know, there's just so many small details that might get overlooked when projects become larger, but Ardacraft is different to me. As I just kind of play through the world, even though I don't have the deepest Lord of the Rings knowledge, you can just kind of sense the amount of dedication that the team has and the amount of passion that everyone has for this project. And when I was interviewing Jack in a previous video, I could just hear the amount of how proud he was of his project and how far it's come. And it was really fun. I was actually really kind of starstruck to be interviewing with to do a video with the founder of Ardacraft, because I think to me this is really like the pinnacle of Minecraft building. So quickly, I would like to turn off shaders here, just so we can kind of take a look around without the shaders on for a little bit. Whenever you turn off the shaders, I feel like you can really start seeing the individual blocks that were used to blend everything together. So you can see here on the bottom of the main tree here, the different textures and things all blending in with each other as it goes up to the top. It's a really, really cool detail, and you can even see the roots of the tree kind of growing outwards. So I always get questions asking about what my PC specs are. Currently, this is gonna sound so dumb, but currently I have a Ryzen 5 3600, which is really old at this point. And I recently upgraded my graphics card to an RTX 5070. So I'm very CPU bound for the moment, but I like to showcase the map without shaders just to showcase that you don't necessarily need a high-end computer to play on Ardacraft. You could play without shaders and without Distant Horizons enabled, and I don't think it would run any worse than just a regular Minecraft map. So let me quickly switch over to nighttime. We can see Caris Galadon really comes to life now with all the lights on. But yeah, you don't necessarily have to play with shaders or even Distant Horizons. You can play without shaders and get a very like vanilla experience, and I'm sure the frame rate would be fine. I think there is some optimization mods already installed in Ardacraft, so things like Sodium and Iris. From what I know, the team of builders that actually builds on Ardacraft has a wide variety of hardware, so you don't need the latest and greatest computer to play on here. I absolutely love this location. Specifically, I love like little seats like this. I could definitely imagine coming back home after like a long day of hunting in the woods, getting a nice glass of wine, reading some books, sitting out here, enjoying the breeze from the treetops here. But here you can see some butterflies flying around. Like I was saying earlier, there's some like 2D animated sprites that Conquest Reforged adds. Something I always notice about the Elven kind of builds is they tend to have a lot of scrolls. They're very much interested in knowledge with their books and things, which I always like that they include that in the buildings. I'm a big fan of the Elvish architecture and vibes here. I feel like this room alone just completely destroys everything I'm able to build by myself in Minecraft. If you were to watch my world tour compared to this, it's not even really in the same league. But the community in Ardacraft is actually really, really welcoming. I feel like I'm pretty clueless when it comes to Lord of the Rings stuff, but some of the Ardacraft members actually found my videos and channel, and they were just really nice, and it was really cool. So following along the river here, this is where the first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, actually ends, and the Fellowship kind of gets split up. And this area is one of my favorite landscapes of the entire map. Just the water in the foreground, and then you have the beautiful mountain ranges off in the distance. I actually really like this really old, overgrown tree, just kind of overlooking the water here. I feel like the bliss shaders really are the cream on top for this mod pack. The water just looks really cool. And what's kind of interesting with the bliss shaders is they surprisingly are not that hard to run. I feel like bliss shaders is actually very optimized compared to some shader packs out there. You can see the falls here, and the builders actually even went in and added mist, kind of where it would look the best. So these blocks are actually don't have any collision, so you can just walk straight through them, but they are blocks, as you can see if I break some of them. The Lord of the Rings movies really only show a couple of the locations that are actually in Middle-earth. For example, Moria is actually way bigger than what is actually shown in the movies, according to the actual lore of the location. And it's kind of cool that you're able to actually come into Minecraft and explore all of Middle-earth and not just the parts that are from the movies. Here's a nice overview of the falls here. You can see as we get farther and farther away from the falls, the mist actually starts looking like mist because of the distant horizons, like LODs. So another location I want to check out is Fangorn Forest, which is where Merry and Pippin kind of hide away from all the Uruk-hai. And I really wanted to check this place out because I've never been here before in game. Just to kind of showcase the how much variety the builders are actually able to build. There's just a huge selection of landscapes in Middle-earth, and it's really cool to see how the builders are able to adapt to each different landscape. I really like these trees in particular, the kind of dead trees in the forest. Make our way through Fangorn. I definitely want to go to Edoras. I'm kind of vaguely following along where the movies go through from what I remember, but all of these locations I think are explored much more deeply in the books. And like I was saying, the behind the scenes stuff with Ardacraft, they actually have very detailed kind of geography for Middle-earth, so they're able to really mimic the land. It's kind of crazy how much behind the scenes work actually goes into a project like this. So not only does it look really beautiful to play through and just explore, but the actual thought process behind everything has all been thought out. And I think that's what makes this project really special. I think it'd be so cool if somehow they were able to mod this type of terrain generation into Minecraft. Like have this type of stuff be randomly generated, but I just don't really see how it's possible. So Ardacraft's actually been around since 2014, I believe. Slowly more people started joining the server and actually adding to it and building it. And it's really cool to see how far it's come, and obviously it's still a work in progress. By the time you're watching this video, maybe more projects have been completed or have been started. So here we are just outside Edoras here. But taking our focus away from the main city, you can see all the different farmland that stretches on and on for miles out here. And I really love that the builders and teams actually went into the detail of creating the farms that surround these iconic locations. I think it'd be very easy for someone to say, okay, well, we completed the main location. We don't really have to pay too much attention to the surrounding areas, but that's just not really how this server operates. You can see the gate opens with the create mod, which I think is really cool. Create's one of those mods that I really want to have a playthrough with, and I'm curious if you guys have ever tried it in your own Minecraft worlds, or if you guys have ever played using Conquest Reforged or anything like that. So we can see the main house up there, but we should take a look around the village, maybe stop into some of the houses. With just the scale of this map, it's kind of impossible to make a short video about Ardacraft, but I have gotten comments in the past saying that people enjoy watching my videos in the background, so which I really appreciate. As a YouTuber, that's kind of the biggest compliment I can get. But let's take a look inside one of these houses. So definitely kind of Skyrim-esque. Almost reminds me of Whiterun in a way. Kind of a bad comparison, but that's my only real frame of reference. So very Viking, very Nordic. You have the little fire pit in the middle and all the beds surrounding it so everybody can stay warm. One of the details I really enjoy is actually these unfinished houses. I feel like these really make the world come alive because now it doesn't seem like, okay, everything's sort of set in stone. Things are actually still being built and the world is very much alive and people are building and going about their lives. So I really like the inclusion of that. But you can see every single house you step into sort of has its own story. And if you were to join Ardacraft and look into, you know, becoming a builder, you can start off as like a very basic kind of player like I am, and they'll sort of, there's like a little tutorial that you run through and it'll teach you how to actually go about building things like this. So you can learn the style of Ardacraft and how to build different kind of locations and using all the tools in Conquest Reforged. I actually really like how you can see the sunlight leak through the rafters here. So when Ardacraft actually came out, I don't think they had distant horizons installed initially, so the render distance would kind of cut off. You know, basically you wouldn't be able to see past the walls here. With it enabled, we can see way out there. So let's fly our way up to the main house here on the top. But every single house you see here, you can walk into every single one, and they each have their own storyline and their own little families that are living there. I think walking from the gate way down there all the way up to the longhouse here would take a solid 5 minutes. That's just kind of the scale of everything. But coming up to the top, you can see how big just even this location is. Not to mention all the locations we were walking through just to get here. But let's take a step inside. I really love this architecture and this style of build. So it looks like we have a nice big feast in here. Got all kinds of soup and rabbit stew cooking up. Very merry times in here. And here's where Gandalf actually frees Theoden from Saruman's kind of grasp that he has on him, which is kind of cool. It's really cool to actually like watch the movies and then come back and play through the map. And like I was saying before, the Pathfinder, you're actually able to follow along with the characters sort of as an interactive experience. So you don't necessarily have to warp from location to location. You could literally walk from Hobbiton and follow along with Frodo and Sam and Pippin and all the characters as they travel through Middle-earth. But yeah, such a bad comparison, but this really does remind me of the Great Hall from Whiterun in Skyrim. Or Dragon's Reach, I think is it's called. It's such a beautiful location. I love it. So here we are, taking the pathway up to Helm's Deep. What a beautiful little shot here from the bottom. All the buildings and things on the outskirts of Helm's Deep, it really puts into perspective that this isn't just an isolated location. There is actual, you know, people living around Helm's Deep and in the castle. But let's quickly turn off the shaders again, just so we can kind of see what it looks like without it. You can see all the terrain that they use, the different texturing that they use to block up and build Helm's Deep. So let's turn the shaders back on, because I know people prefer them on for the video, but here's a little sewer that they blow up. Let's actually take a look at Helm's Deep during the nighttime. I think that'd be really cool. So it's a little bit harder to see. There's not really a whole lot of light at Helm's Deep, but this is kind of when the actual like battle takes place, is at nighttime. So walking along the embankment wall here, we can kind of see maybe what the soldiers would be seeing if they were guarding Helm's Deep, the little road leading up. But yeah, Helm's Deep as a location, definitely not the homiest place in the world. Very much a location that was built just for defending. And it's a really cool set piece from the movie. And it's really cool to be able to walk around it in Minecraft. Sometimes I have to kind of remind myself that this is Minecraft. I mean, sure, we can sort of see our player's hand here on the side, but just the way everything looks, I really do feel like this is a completely different game sometimes. Stepping inside the dining hall. I love the keg with the classic tripwire hook out the side. Classic Minecraft building technique there. Yeah, Helm's Deep's not the coziest little location, but I still feel like it's kind of homey. I can imagine the soldiers just kind of quietly eating amongst themselves, maybe chatting or bantering a little bit. But spirits aren't ultimately super high in a place like this. Making our way up the tower, we can see the main guard room here in the middle, and there's actually that's actually so funny. There's a Steve skin flying around just to prove that it is Minecraft. I've gotten quite a few comments from the members of Ardacraft, and I was really surprised that they saw my videos and just how friendly and cool they were. And I think it's really awesome that this is actually a server that anybody can join and play as long as you have a legal copy of Minecraft. Take a look out the window here and see all of the lands. But yeah, even the King's Room in Helm's Deep isn't like the most impressive or homey room, but it's definitely the most secured, being at the top here. You can see a lockbox maybe with their most valued items in there. Let's climb all the way to the top and see what the view's like from up here. And here we are at the top of Helm's Deep on the flagpole. So next I want to check out Isengard here, which is another iconic location from The Lord of the Rings. I think one of the things that really stands out to me about Isengard is the walls surrounding it and how really cool this door is, the way it opens here, thanks to the Create mod. So obviously Isengard is where they fight Saruman, and it's really cool to be able to explore it here in game and like check out some of these like random little nooks and crannies of Isengard that you don't really get to see in the movies. And I really love the lush gardens surrounding the spire in the center. It's actually it's such a contrasty kind of look, because the outside is very fairy tale-esque, whereas the inside of Isengard is very like dark and brooding. It's really cool. It gives it such a cool contrast. But yeah, if you guys are interested in checking out a Let's Play of Conquest Reforged, let me know in a comment below. I'd love to actually start a survival world with this mod and play through it. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I'm really a big fan of nighttime scenes like this. You can see the surrounding gardens are nice and lit up, and there's even some lights kind of shining out of the tower. I think walking through the gardens at night is actually really nice. This is such a vibe right now. But let's turn it back to day so we can see some of the details here. I really like how steep this staircase is. It's such a random little detail, but you know, that's something you can do with Conquest Reforged, where you can make the bottom a little bit more gradual and then the staircase gets exponentially more steep at the top. It's kind of a cool vibe and cool look. Stepping inside the bottom floor here. I think a really cool detail is that these aren't actually reflections in the floor. This is actually the builders went in and recreated, or they made like a fake sort of mirror effect on the bottom there, where they rebuilt everything but just reversed. So if I go into no clip mode, we can kind of come down here and check out how they did this, which is actually really, really cool to see how they like mirrored everything and made it look just like it did above. There's not really any sort of part of these builds that is kind of like halfway done, or you can even see some clouds up there to showcase like how big this room actually is. Let's kind of climb our way to the top of Isengard here. Definitely a very iconic location from The Lord of the Rings. So like I was saying, Ardacraft was my first kind of introduction to The Lord of the Rings. I never really watched obviously I knew what The Lord of the Rings was, but I never really watched the movies or, you know, kept up with it or anything. So it was really fun to actually explore the Ardacraft map and kind of piece things together, and then actually watch the movies after the fact and sort of figure out, oh, what these locations actually are. Isengard was one of those locations that I recognized as one of those iconic locations, but I never knew how it would actually fit into the story. But I actually really love Isengard, even though it's kind of like this dark place. It really reminds me of, if we're talking in Minecraft terms here, it obviously reminds me of the Nether, just how dark it is. But I've always been a really big fan of just dark builds like this. Really cool that they went into the detail of adding kitchens and dining rooms, just to show that this is like a livable place that people live in and stay at. Making our way up to the next floor, we have a nice library up here. I really like how the columns go up. That's actually a really cool look. And while we're in here, we might as well check it out without shaders. Just so we can maybe even get a even brighter view of how everything looks. The shaders add a very cinematic look to everything and really help darken the interiors a lot. But part of me still really loves playing without the shaders, just so we can see even more detail. But turning them back on, we have a little study room here, kind of looking out. Most of Isengard kind of revolves around these central little chambers, and then it has these kind of alcoves. So this seems to be a study floor, whereas below us was a library. And here's kind of like the apothecary, I guess is the word for it. I'm not really sure how to... This is where they brew all the potions and all the medicines and poisons and things that they're making. But making our way to the top floor here, we can see the main chambers, the main little bedroom here, where Saruman would probably be sleeping. Honestly, as dark as this place is, it does feel kind of homey. Even though it's supposed to be obviously this evil little place, but we have some nice amenities in here. Like a skull in the corner. There's even a bathroom in here with a nice fur rug. I feel like I'm on an episode of MTV Cribs right now. With the walk-in closet too. And of course up here we have the treasure room. All kinds of gold and ornate objects and sets of armor. Really fun. It's really fun to walk through all these locations after watching the movies. Kind of getting to see a new perspective on it. And here we have a little safe room with the lock boxes behind bars. And of course we can come up to the roof, which is where Gandalf was kind of stranded for a little while. But kind of zooming out from Isengard, I can't really put into words how amazing this looks and the scale of everything, especially looking out off in the distance. So off in that direction is where Helm's Deep was, which is where we were earlier. And I think it wouldn't be a real Lord of the Rings video if we didn't actually check out Minas Tirith, the capital of Gondor. That'd be a really fun location to end it off at. So here we are at Minas Tirith, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to see the scale of how big this building actually is. And really, this could be a map all by itself. But coming down here to the ground floor, you can just see how massive Minas Tirith actually is. So this is another one of those locations that I recognized, but I didn't really understand where it fit into the lore. And this location is still under construction. So I'll kind of point out when we see it, you can kind of see that there's a lot of wool blocks kind of placed around. And wool is sort of how Ardacraft communicates with each other. Like this is all temporary blocks, so this needs to come back. So whoever's working on this section would see, okay, this is wool. I have to come in and actually texture it out with the appropriate blocks. So it's really cool. You actually get to see sort of the behind the scenes or in progress sort of build here. And this location is so massive that honestly this could be a map by itself. But the fact that you literally could walk from Hobbiton to the capital of Gondor all in a single map, it would take a long time, but you could do it. And I think that's pretty amazing. So we can see here a in progress section that's all wool, and they have some signs left for the builders so that they know what to do when they come back and start working on this section. And you can just see the massive scale here. You can even see some notes left, kind of where the different fields are. So a dairy, a wheat field, bread field over here. So you can see they actually marked out where they want some different types of fields. And in the interview I did with Fornad, he was kind of showcasing how they go about actually doing the different types of farms. And they actually have like a whole spreadsheet or document that sort of details how the farms actually work. And there's actually like tons of purpose behind every single farm that you actually see. So it would be actually realistic to what farmers would be doing at this time of the year for the specific crops they're growing. And it's actually really, really cool. You can see we get a huge, beautiful view of Gondor. My LEDs are a little bit messed up. just as I haven't traveled to that part of the map quite yet. But doesn't take away from the fact that this is just a beautiful view, or beautiful build here. So I think one of the main questions I saw a lot of people commenting in my previous video was, why exactly do they do all of this in Minecraft versus building this in Unreal Engine 5 or something along those lines? And they chose Minecraft for a very specific reason. Fornad actually answers that in a previous video, so I'll leave a link for that in the description. But it's really cool to walk through some of the unfinished builds just to show, like, Ardacraft is an ongoing project. It's still being worked on to this day, even 10 plus years later. And it's really cool. And again, I think it's amazing that the community on Ardacraft is so welcoming, and it's very easy to join. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little journey from the Shire to Minas Tirith. So currently Mordor is currently a work in progress. So we can actually see Minas Tirith all the way from Lothlorien, which is a settlement way off in the distance. And again, this is thanks to a mod like Distant Horizons, which really shows you this scale. Lothlorien's definitely one of my favorite locations on Ardacraft, and it was actually suggested that I check this spot out. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little walk around Ardacraft. If you guys are interested in joining it, feel free to check the description for all the links. And thank you guys so much for subscribing and all the support I've gotten lately. I really appreciate you guys, and I really appreciate all my channel members. Yeah, thank you guys so much, and I'll see y'all in the next one.